Hello, in the TM-Form Innovation Hub, we've been working to add AI services into the ODA canvas, both into the execution environment, so that you can have components with MCP service, for example, or agentic components, but also in how you operate the canvas and even how you develop into the canvas. Now, developing into the canvas means building agentic skills and MCP servers into coding tools. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to demonstrate one of those tools. So as part of the canvas now, there's an agent skill which helps people onboard onto the canvas. So it's an ideal tool for new members to use to get their heads around how the canvas works and how to interact with components. I've got a demonstration of this. So I'm going to demonstrate this using Claude Code. It's using this agent skills, which is a new open standard, so it should work on any of the popular coding tools. I know it works in GitHub Copilot, which is what we use internally in Vodafone. I'm going to demonstrate this in Claude Code. To use the skill, it's a built-in skill, so if you're in a folder with the ODA canvas cloned into, it's just available as a hash menu. So if I type a / and it's the Canvas Ops tutorial. And if I click on that, you can see it says it's an interactive tutorial for learning and exploring the ODA canvas. So if I click enter, it should actually run this skill for me. And the idea is that the agent will guide me through how to use the canvas. The great thing about using an agent skill instead of just reading a paper tutorial is that the agent is really good at troubleshooting. So you can see the first thing it's done is it says, I'll help you learn and explore the ODA canvas on Kubernetes. Let me first verify your cluster is ready. And if your cluster wasn't ready, it would actually guide you through how do you properly install the ODA canvas. And I've got it so it's prompting me to make changes. And what it's doing, it's asking for permission to run kubecontrol get namespace components. So it's checking that it is installed. And if I allow that, then the agent should verify that the canvas is actually installed on my local machine, and then it'll guide me through how do I install components and do other things. So it says, excellent, the ODA canvas is installed on your cluster. I can see the components namespace and all the ODA custom resource definitions. So the canvas is properly installed. And as I said, if it wasn't, it would guide me through some of the steps to install it. And now this tutorial, it presents a number of different menus, giving me options about what to do. So the first thing is there's a menu saying, do I want to learn about the ODA canvas? Do I want to install it? Do I want to manage components? And then there's other things I can do. So I just click the one about the ODA canvas. Then it's just going to give me some descriptions from the documentation about what is the ODA canvas and how does it work. So this is about the ODA canvas. So it's an execution environment for ODA components running on Kubernetes. Think of it as the operating system for telecom software components. So the tutorial knows all about the ODA canvas and components, and it can describe all of this to the user of this tutorial. So it's describing what the operators are, what the different custom resources we have in the ODA canvas, and it's just going to do some work to check which API versions we're on. And as it's doing it, it's actually showing you some of the commands that you can run. So the tutorial is showing you the commands that the tutorial is using to interact with the canvas on Kubernetes. And now it's suggesting, it's giving me a menu of options. It's suggesting, because I've got a canvas installed, do I want to deploy a component or do I want to view deployed components? So I'm going to ask it to deploy a component. So you can click one. And what it's doing, it's going through that process. And if I go through it with you, so let me guide you through deploying a component. First, it's going to update the Helm repository. So we deploy components using Helm, and you can see under here, there was a command Helm repo add. So it's adding our reference example component Helm repository. It's checking any existing deployments. So it's doing a Helm list and nothing's deployed because I've just got an empty canvas. And now it's using a Helm command, Helm search repo ODA components, to show what charts are available for me to install, what components are available for me to install. So you see it's very useful, the tutorial is actually showing me how to interact with the canvas using all the common tools. And this is its summary. So it's saying, in our example repository, we've actually got 2 sample components, a product catalog and a product inventory. And it's asking which one do I want to deploy. And it's saying, and it'll ask me about optional features. So I'm just going to click 1 to install the product catalog. And now it's saying, when you install a product catalog, there are some things which are options, and I can have it so it installs dependent APIs. So I can have a catalog with a dependency on a different catalog, and also I can have an MCP server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install it, and I'm going to install it with the MCP server. So we'll be testing that later on. And so now it's showing me the command to install that catalog with this property of component or MCP enabled equals true. So showing me this is how you install the product catalog component on the canvas, and it's telling me about what is happening. So the idea of the tutorial is guiding you through the commands and also explaining in English what is happening. So the ODA canvas orchestrates a multi-stage lifecycle, and it creates all the Kubernetes deployment services, and most importantly, a component custom resource. So this is what actually packages all the software together and makes this one composable unit. And then it's saying that the component operator, so there's an operator running in the canvas, and it decomposes that into specialized child resources. So there's resources for exposed APIs, dependent APIs, identity config and secrets management. And then for each of those, there's a specialist operator. And so, for example, the API operator configures your API gateway routes and policies and things like that. And so this tutorial is guiding me through. This is exactly what's happening. And it's going to go and check the deployment status. And you see it's currently still in progress. And then it's asking me what do I want to do next. So I can check the status again just to see if it's now complete. And it's showing me the command to use. And it is complete. And so now it's saying, yes, the component has reached complete status. This is what that means. So it's fully deployed, and all the child resources have been created, and all this, like the modular operators have executed. And now it's going to look through some of those child resources, and it's now explaining to me this is what was being deployed. So there's a component operator, and it has these APIs. So there's a product catalog management API at this endpoint. It's showing it's ready. It's part of your core function. I have a promotion management, which is one of the optional APIs on product catalog. It has its MCP server, what we asked for, and it also has a security function where you can set the roles and permissions, and it also has a metrics for observability in the management function. So I can inspect. This is the component which is just being deployed. And now it's asking me what do I want to do next. And so, for example, I might want to view the exposed APIs in more detail. So if I click on one, and it's showing me the command it's using. So it's saying kubectl get exposed APIs, and it's asking for the full record as a JSON object, which is what you can do. And so now this is for each API endpoint. This is explaining in detail what it is. So the product catalog management is part of the core function. It's showing me the URL for the API itself, and there's like a documentation URL. I can actually test this for you if I open this in a browser. We will see the documentation for this site. I'll just do that very quickly. So this is that URL that it's just showing me. So this is a product catalog management component, and it's showing me all of the endpoints of all the different resources that you get as part of this documentation endpoint. And it's also showing me what we've configured. So in the component, there were options to add cores and rate limiting and authentication and validation. We haven't enabled them when we deployed the component, but they are there to be enabled. And it's showing me the MCP server, the security function, the management function, and it's explaining what it did. Now, I can do things like I can inspect the MCP server. So I can actually use that to discover the tools and resources that are exposed by the MCP server endpoint. So let's do that. And so now it's trying to run like an inspect MCP server script. And you can see that it's got the API endpoint of the MCP server because it's able to look at the resource in Kubernetes. So I say allow that. So now Claude is able to actually inspect the MCP server and see what is inside of it. And this is what in that MCP server. So it's got some details about the actual server itself, the version of the MCP specification it supports, and the capabilities. So probably the most important capability is it's showing the tools, and it's saying this MCP server supports 20 tools that map directly to this TM Form 620 product catalog management API. And these are the tools, so I can do a catalog get, and it's explaining what those tools do. So that this is what the MCP tools do. It also shows what resources. So this product catalog API allows you to interact with certain data entities, and this is through the MCP. You can see what are those, the schema of those entities, and you see there's a catalog, a category, a specification of product offering, a product offering price, schemas, and finally there are a set of example prompts. So this is how the agent actually knows how to use the MCP server. It's because it shows like a set of reusable prompt templates. And so now through the MCP I can see these are the different prompt templates that we've created to help an agent learn example prompts to use against that MCP server. Now at the end of every action in this tutorial, it proposes a contextual menu of things which it's suggesting you might want to do. But you could, at any time, you can return to the main menu, and actually any time you could just write in English what you want to do next, and the tutorial will intelligently interpret what you ask for and then try and accomplish what you've asked it to do. So I'm just saying I want to return to the main menu because I'm going to deploy a second component with a dependency, just to demonstrate that. So if I go into manage ODA components, I want to deploy a new component, and it always tries to be contextually relevant. So it's saying deploy a new component. Let's check what's currently deployed and show you available options. So it knows I've already got one component deployed, and it's a product catalog with MCP server, and it's saying I could deploy a product inventory or second product catalog. And it's suggesting with this one that I should have dependent APIs enabled to demonstrate this cross-component API dependency. So that's what I'm going to do. So I want to demonstrate a second catalog which should have a dependency on the first one. So I'm going to choose option 2. So I'm not going to have the MCP server for the second catalog. I'm just going to deploy it with the dependent APIs. And so this is the command. So helm install PC2 is the name of the second catalog. It's ODA components / product catalog, and it's got the set component dependent APIs enabled. So this is all you have to do to actually then have a component which will declare a dependency for the canvas to resolve. And it's now explaining what is going on. So what happens with cross-component dependency resolution? So the component operator decomposes that new component. It creates exposed APIs the same as the product catalog one. For the dependent API, it's a new resource which is saying I depend on there being a product catalog management API. And then there's a dependency operator which is going to try and resolve this. So it'll actually look for an exposed API with the correct type. And it's saying I'm looking for a downstream product catalog. So it's going to try and find one, and it finds one because there's one on the first component. And then the operator is going to resolve this automatically. So it's going to give the second component the endpoint for the first component so that it can call this API, and then it's going to report that the dependent API is ready. So I'm just going to, it's not finished deploying yet, so if I click the view the status again, and now my second component is complete, and I should be able to test that dependency is working. And this is a summary of what's happened. So my dependent API is called downstream product catalog. So the second component, it says I want a downstream product catalog, and it's been resolved by the canvas, and it's given it the API on the first product catalog in that. So it's given it the resolved URL is the API of the first product catalog, and it's basically saying this is ready. And what I want to do is I want to actually put some test data into the first product catalog and then query it in the second catalog. And as I said, with this tutorial, I can either just click on the menus or I can just ask it to do things, and it's very intelligent and able to resolve most of the things I ask it to do. So I'll say create sample test data in PC1. So it says, great idea, let me create some sampled product catalog data in PC1 component. This will populate the catalog with test data that demonstrates the TMF 620 product catalog management API. And it can see that the API is there. And now there was, like in the tutorial, there's a Python module to create this test data. I just need to allow it to run. And so this is now creating some test data in my product catalog. And I can show it. This is the sort of things it's creating. And it's just validating that it was created correctly. This is what it created. So it created a set of categories, catalogs, some product specifications, some offerings. And it generated a whole load of events using the event notification pattern. And now it's saying, what do I want to do next? And I want to test this product 2 dependency. So I should be able to call the product catalog 2 and it's see that same data in product catalog 1. So if I do that one, and it's saying success with the cross-component wiring is confirmed, and it's just saying it's tested that against that test data, and it's testing that it was resolved using the product catalog 2 API. So effectively it's a federated catalog. So product catalog 2 is querying product catalog 1 and offering the federation of that data. I'm just going to again test that I can ask it to do commands. So I'm going to say make a get request to the product catalog 2 catalog API endpoint. And I'm doing this because I'm next going to go on to the observability, but I want to actually have an example query that we'll see in the observability data. And this is what the summary of it. And this is it's saying it's in string, but this is what we'd expect. So the product catalog 2 API is returning the exact same data as the product catalog 1 API because it is using this federated ID. And I've got a response, and it's showing the catalog, product offerings, and categories. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this in the observability, because I should see a trace of what happens in the observability. So I'm clicking option 4, view observability data. So all of these components, they're instrumented and creating open metrics and open telemetry data to go into the observability. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and show some of that observability data. And again, the tutorial is very good because it's checking that the observability is all set up and working correctly before showing me the options of what I can do. It's even checking that, like with the observability by default, we don't expose them outside of the cluster, and it's just checking that on my local instance that I have my observability services, the port forward is making them available to my local host. So the tutorial is even checking that is set up correctly. It's proposing to do a whole lot of things. I'm just going to say, show me how to view the Jaeger user interface. But I just want to see the observability for myself. Like I would do a whole load of tests and actually check that everything's working. Yes, so to access the Jaeger user interface, it's available on my local machine. So I open that in my browser. So this is the observability running, and I click on the service I want to monitor, which in this case is the product catalog 2. If I click on find traces, it should show me these are traces of different API calls that have been sent to this product catalog. And if I click on one of them, this is the get, hopefully this is the last get that we did. And you can see here that I did a get on the product catalog management API, and there's multiple steps. This is a trace of what's going on inside of that component. But correctly, at some stage, the product catalog 2 component is actually called the get on the product catalog 1 component, because it is using this dependent API. And so we can see from this ability telemetry that dependent API is actually working in practice, and the telemetry events coming from the components shown in a single trace where this yellow is the product catalog 2, but you can see as part of it getting its catalog data, it's also inquiring the equivalent data from the product catalog 1. So the observability, firstly, it's working. The tutorial made sure it was all working and available before it presented it to me, and also the observability is showing that this federated catalog with its dependency is actually itself working. So that's it for a short tour of this ODA Canvas tutorial using agent skills to allow an agent to take me through a tutorial of the ODA Canvas. I haven't gone through all the features, so for example I could have installed a canvas with a Kong API gateway, I could have tested a component with authentication enforced by the API gateway, I could ask it to make changes to the rate limits and seeing those rate limits in Kong, I could have created an external identity in Keycloak and show how that authentication works with that external identity. There's lots more things you can do with the tutorial, and the idea is that the tutorial is to guide new users. This is exactly how the canvas works and lets you drill down into the different features and helps you find exactly how to deploy components and interrogate their services. Okay, thanks very much.